Hello everyone, welcome back. We'll expand a little bit more on the subject of the biggest threat during a global disaster, which I believe would be the cold if you live anywhere in the northern part of the United States. Okay, just to quickly review some of the things I said in an earlier video, most heaters today, most home heaters depend on some form of electricity. And that would probably be the first thing that gets knocked out in any global disaster, okay? And especially if it's a war type of situation, right? If it's a civil war type of situation particularly, what you're probably going to have is you're going to probably have both sides, shooting out the transformers in an intent to create chaos, okay? And if you guys know anything about changing the transformers on top of the telephone poles, okay, you know that it takes about a day to change one transformer, and there's a very limited supply of transformers. Okay, so in any type of a war type of situation, the transformers are probably going to be targeted as a means of creating panic and chaos. Okay. So your electricity is going to get knocked out, which means that your heater's probably not going to work, your water pump is probably not going to work, and your septic system is not going to work. Okay. Now, a lot of people that don't realize it, because maybe especially if you live in a city where even if your heat goes down, it only goes down for maybe a day or so. And if you live in a brick building or a stone building, it can retain the heat for a relatively long period of time, maybe a couple of days. Most people that live in cities or live in brick houses don't realize that given enough time, the temperature inside of the building is going to equal the temperature outside the building, okay? And what happens is basically that cold goes all the way through the walls, okay? So it's not just the air inside the building that's now freezing, but the walls inside of the building are freezing too. It basically, the funny thing is that a lot of times the inside of the building ends up being almost colder than the outside of the building. Because what happens is the inside of the building now basically traps that cold in, okay? So it becomes almost like an ice box, okay? So this is really significant, and if you spend any amount of time outdoors, the way the body works is it gives basically priority to your head and your chest, okay? As far as warmth, okay? So basically, that's the reason why we always cover our heads. And we close our, we cover our chest when we're outdoors, because basically by keeping our head and chest warm, we're trying to keep our fingers and toes warm. Because what the body does is, if the body feels that the head is getting cold or the chest is getting cold, what it does is it prioritizes. It cuts off the blood flow to your fingers and your toes, because basically it figures that they're not necessary. Okay, you don't need them to live. So it cuts off the blood flow to your fingers and your toes, and that's the reason why your fingers and toes always get cold first. Okay, unless you get cold really, really fast. So sometimes if you find yourself like if you get, let's say, if you get soaked, okay, that's actually a pretty dangerous situation. If you get like really soaked, where basically you are shivering and you feel cold in your whole body, like straight through your core. But your fingers and your toes are not cold yet. Basically, that whole system's been bypassed. Okay, the body never got a chance to cut off the blood flow to your fingers and your toes, and what it's doing is it's causing now your muscles are spasming in an attempt to try and generate internal heat. Right, so the muscles are like basically just twitching back and forth really fast. That's what that shivering's all about. And now basically you're in danger of hyperthermia. Okay. So here's the thing, for you guys that don't spend too much time outdoors. If it's cold outside and if you get to the point where your fingers and your toes are numb, okay, it is really hard to get them warmed up, okay, or even worse, let's say if you get to the point of, where you're shivering, okay, it is really hard to warm yourself up without an external heat source. Okay, so basically you have to get to a fire, you have to get to a indoors to warm shelter. Okay, now here's the problem: if that's not available to you, right? If you don't have the availability, if you don't already have the fire set up, or you don't have a warm place to go, you're in a lot of trouble, because what's going to happen is as your fingers get get numb, okay, now all of a sudden you can't really use them as much, okay, they're numb. So, you know, maybe you started trying to build a fire, but now all of a sudden it's like your fingers aren't working anymore. So basically the rate of your demise is speeding up at that point, okay? So you know, again, you know, I spend a lot of times outdoors, so I know how hard it is to work when it's really, really cold. You know, and if you're not prepared, and being prepared isn't enough. You have to kind of be a step ahead of the game. You know, you have to anticipate that your fingers and your toes are going to warm up, and you gotta know, okay, when this happens, you know, I got this already set up, or I'm going to go to that spot where I got heat already going. So that's one of the things for you guys to be aware of, that once your fingers and your toes freeze up, you know, if you're outdoors, it's really hard. You know, you can't just put them under your arms here and jump up and down, you know, and think that you're going to warm them up. It doesn't work that way, okay? Now you're in danger of frostbite. So you know, again, I just wanted to expand on how difficult it is, you know, to exist as a human being in sub-freezing temperatures, if the system breaks down and you don't have a heat source. And, you know, most houses today, you know, they don't have chimneys. You know, when I mean by chimneys, I mean, you know, chimney. I mean, obviously you have a chimney from your oil heater or your oil burner or your propane heater, but you don't have a chimney where you can put wood into it and burn it, okay? And in a global disaster situation, a lot of people are going to make the mistake of trying to, you know, put a fire barrel inside their house, and, you know, try and generate some heat, and they're going to end up, you know, burning down their house. And so now they have, you know, now they're completely, you know, shit out of luck. They don't have any place to stay, so now they're going to freeze even faster. You know, most houses today are not equipped to work without electricity, okay? And that's really the biggest threat. You know, a lot of times when we're thinking of zombie apocalypse, you know, World War III, you know, we're thinking about, you know, fighting the looters and fighting the communist invaders. But I think we probably should be spending you know, just as much time thinking about how we're going to fight the cold. You know, a lot of people will go a step further. You know, they'll think beyond fighting the invaders or the communists, you know, and they'll think ahead to food storage, and they'll think ahead to water storage, but very few people go all the way out and think about a heat source and how you're going to survive without a heat source, and don't think you can just cut down one of these trees in the middle of the winter and use that to cut that up and use that as firewood. First of all, it's pretty hard to cut these trees down. You do need a chainsaw. You got to, it takes a lot of work to cut them down. And again, that's not going to be so easy if your fingers get frozen. Okay, I know because I do this stuff. So working with a chainsaw when your fingers are frozen is not that easy. And a lot of times, when it's really cold, it's very hard to just get that chainsaw started. And once you do get it started and you cut the tree up, first of all, you gotta, every 25 cuts, a lot of people don't know this, but you gotta basically sharpen the blades on the chainsaw, okay? Because otherwise it's not gonna cut, because the trees are very tough, and a frozen tree is probably gonna be even tougher. So now once you get your tree cut up, what you're gonna find is that, you can't just throw, even if you throw kerosene on it, it's usually not gonna ignite. Because the wood is frozen solid all the way through. Okay, so it's pretty tough to get it going. The way a lot of times the way I get a frozen lumber to ignite is I'll basically take charcoal and I'll put that on top of the so I have my lumber, and then I'll take a pile of charcoal, just like same amount that you would use for a barbecue, right? If you think about the barbecue that you do during the summertime, put the same amount on top of the wood, put some oil on that, right? Ignite that, and basically that charcoal is going to get really, really, really hot, obviously, right? So, and what's going to happen is the heat from the burning charcoal is going to transfer down into the wood. It will, it will basically, warm the wood up. And dry it out at the same time, okay? And it will take a while for this to happen, but hopefully at some point you'll be able to get that lumber to ignite, and to actually, get a fire going, okay? So, there's a little trick for you guys as far as trying to get really cold wood to burn, Okay? All right, I'll talk to you guys next time.